This happened about 3 years ago when I was a senior in college. I was driving home after a long internship in another province. It had been dark for a while, and I was just trying to get home before midnight. After hours of driving, I was exhausted. My eyes were getting heavy, and I knew I couldn't push it anymore. I saw a small lone gas station up ahead and pulled in, planning to fill up and get some rest. The station was hidden behind some tall bushes, with dim, flickering lights. It looked incredibly isolated. It must have been around 11 p.m. Besides my car and a truck parked in the corner, there was no one there. The truck looked old and dusty, like a cargo or transport vehicle. The windows were pitch black, and I couldn't see inside. A chill went down my spine. The feeling that someone was watching me from that truck wouldn't go away. I tried to shake it off, thinking I was just tired and paranoid. I turned off my car and got out. The cold night air hit my face. It was eerily quiet, just the rustle of the wind and the hum of the gas station ventilation fan. I walked quickly to the pump and started to fill up. While I was pumping gas, I glanced at the truck. I still didn't see anyone, but the feeling of being watched was still there. I told myself to hurry. When I was done, I went to the back of my car to grab something from the trunk. My hand was on the latch, ready to pull it up, when a shadow from behind me suddenly lunged forward. A rough arm wrapped tightly around my neck, squeezing hard. At the same time, another hand clamped over my mouth. My vision blurred. I couldn't react. The stench of sour sweat and old engine oil hit my nose. It was disgusting. I struggled, trying to scream, but only a gurgle came from my throat. "Be quiet, get in the truck, or die," a raspy, breathless voice whispered in my ear. He spoke softly, but I heard every word. A cold feeling ran down my spine. I knew I was in real danger. He was trying to abduct me. I don't know where the strength came from, probably just pure survival instinct. I wasn't thinking, I just knew I had to fight. I was wearing high heels with pointed stilettos. With all my might, I lifted my heel, aimed, and plunged it right into the top of his foot. He let out a pained ugh, and his grip on my neck loosened for a second. I took that chance, using all my strength to drive my elbow into his ribs. I heard a dry crack, followed by a more painful groan from him. His hand let go completely. Without a second thought, I bolted for my car like an arrow. I got in and slammed the door shut, locking it. My hands were shaking, but I managed to reach for the horn and press it repeatedly. The blaring horn echoed through the empty gas station, tearing through the quiet night. I looked in my rearview mirror and saw him clutching his stomach, limping back to that old truck. He climbed in and sped off into the darkness. I just sat there, honking until the sound was ragged, tears streaming down my face. Finally, I got my wits about me and called the police. They came immediately. I told them everything. A few miles down the road, the police found the abandoned truck. Inside, there were ropes, duct tape, and most horrifying of all, a map of the highway with countless gas stations marked in bright red. It's been 3 years since that terrifying night. The scar on my wrist has faded, but the fear hasn't. Whenever I drive long distances, especially at night, I never dare to stop at any isolated gas station. That smell of sour sweat and engine oil still haunts me sometimes, sending a shiver down my spine. I know I was lucky to escape, but the feeling of being hunted, of being seen as an easy target, still haunts me. A couple years back, maybe 3, I was on a morning run on a weekend. It was along the river path in the city. The path gets pretty busy. It's near a famous strip of restaurants and shops. This morning, there were a few groups of people around. Not crowded, but enough that I felt safe. I was running, and I passed a man walking the other way. He said, "Hello," and I said it back politely. Right after, I heard footsteps right behind me. I glanced over my shoulder, figured it was another runner wanting to pass. But it was him, the guy I just passed. The weird thing, he wasn't dressed for a run. Jeans, a puffy winter jacket, a scarf, and shoes that were all wrong for running. It was strange because he'd been heading the other way, so he must have turned around to follow me. I picked up my pace and he picked his up too. I ran faster and he stayed right on me. The third time I tried to speed up, he yelled, "I got you." At that point, the weird feeling turned to pure fear. I had no idea what he wanted, and this was broad daylight on a public path. I yelled over my shoulder, "Please, just leave me alone." He just said, "Oh, sorry," but kept running right behind me. Luckily, I was nearing a group of 3 walkers. I sprinted past them, then, quick as I could, I turned around right behind their backs, screamed at the guy, "Stop following me," and took off the other way. I was hoping my move and my yelling would draw attention, stop him from following. He didn't come after me. I'm out on my own all the time, and I've had a few sketchy encounters, but this one stuck with me. What was his intention? Was he dangerous, or just mentally unstable with no social skills? Would it have gotten worse if no one was around? I never saw him again, which gave me some comfort that he wasn't a regular on my running route. But I hope I never see him again. This happened back in my senior year of high school. I just made a good group of friends, and I was on my parents' landline all the time. Our house was a single-story place with a pretty long driveway. We were across from a huge field, with only a big doctor's house way off in the distance. The end of our driveway had the mailbox, right by the only streetlight on the whole block. One night, I was at the end of the driveway on the phone with my friends. My mom kept opening the front door, telling me to come inside because it was late. I was a typical teenager, just saying, "Give me 5 more minutes," and kept talking, even complaining to my friend about my mom bothering me. All of a sudden, I heard my name called out softly, like someone was trying to get my attention. I figured it was my mom again, so I grumbled to my friend that she was yelling at me and kept on talking. The call came again a few times, and I ignored it. Then I heard someone say, "Come on out," and I turned around to see the front door was closed. It was weird, but I didn't think too much of it. I said my goodbyes and went inside. Once inside, I complained to my mom that she didn't have to yell like that. She looked confused and said she'd been in bed for a while and hadn't come out to call me. My stomach dropped. A few hours later, around 2 a.m., I was watching a horror movie, Evil Dead, in my room. I got hungry and went to the kitchen to make some ramen. My mom heard me and told me to make sure to lock the front door before I went to bed. I went to check the door. It had an oval-shaped frosted glass pane in the middle, and you could just barely see a few spots. Out of habit, I looked through the glass toward the streetlight at the end of the driveway. But this time, I couldn't see the light. For a second, I thought the bulb was out. Then, a person-shaped shadow standing right in front of the glass moved to the side. I panicked and ran straight into my parents' room, woke my dad up, and told him what I saw. He grabbed a baseball bat and went out to check, but he didn't find anything. We turned on all the lights, but there was no sign of anyone. The next morning, as I was getting in my car for school, I noticed the driver's side door was slightly ajar. I figured I just forgot to lock it and didn't think much of it. But when I got home, a police car was parked in our driveway. Turns out, our garage had been broken into the night before. My dad's tools and some other valuables were gone. And it wasn't just us, a bunch of other houses on the block had been robbed that week. I realized the person at the door that night was real, and they had called my name, trying to get me to come outside. They had been lurking around the house, and even looked through the glass at me in the middle of the night. It's been 10 years, but that memory still gives me chills. This happened back around 2008 or 2009. I was visiting my grandma in a rural area near the Lake of the Ozarks, where I went to high school. I knew the area well. When I was at my grandma's, I'd walk into town using the trails, then hit the main road. Sometimes people would stop and offer me a ride. I usually took them up on it. It was a small town, and you knew almost everyone. One day, I was just out of the woods, walking along the road, maybe a mile or two from town. An old blue Ford Taurus pulled over. The driver rolled down the window and said, "Need a ride?" I went over, ready to get in. But when I got a good look at the driver, I froze. He looked like a ragged version of Charles Manson, with long matted brown hair down to his chin, a patchy salt and pepper beard, and cold, scary blue eyes. I went to open the door, but he just started driving. I looked around. The front of the car was normal clean, but the back seat was covered with a blanket, and something was propped up underneath it, about 1.5 feet high. On top of it was a fluffy black dog, just staring at me. The guy asked, "What are you doing here?" I tried to laugh and hide my fear, said I was visiting my grandma and going to meet a friend in the nearby town. He squinted and asked again, "No, I mean, what are you doing here?" I repeated my answer, but he just stared at me instead of the road. Then he yelled, hitting the steering wheel, "What the hell are you doing here?" The dog in the back growled. At this point, I was just hunched against the car door, shaking. When we got to a gas station near the town line, he ordered, not asked, "Give me your glasses." I did it without thinking, even though my vision is terrible. He told me to wait and went inside the store. The dog growled again, and it snapped me out of it. I stumbled out of the car, went into the store, and demanded my glasses back. He just glared at me and silently handed them over. The cashier, who looked scared herself, backed away toward the phone. He left without saying a word. I told the cashier everything. She lent me a phone and some tissues and let me use the manager's office to call my friend. I told her what happened and said I was taking the Woods back to her place to avoid seeing that guy again. The cashier said she'd never seen him and didn't think he was from around there, which only made me feel worse. I left my friend's number with her, asking her call if he came back. I made it safely through the woods to my friend's house and had a good afternoon. The more I think back on it, the more I wonder about what was in the back seat, what that dog was guarding so carefully. It looked like someone was curled up under a blanket. I'm 6'1", 210 pounds, with long hair and a full beard. I usually make people nervous, but that guy scared me to my core. I don't want to think about what could have happened. This happened in my sophomore year of high school. I was in a drama group, doing props and costumes for our school's fall play. I met this sweet guy, Mark, who was always wearing skinny jeans. Through a mutual friend, I found out Mark was bisexual. I started flirting with him, sending him memes, finding reasons to hang out, and we got closer. After 3 months, on the last day of the play, I asked him out, and he said yes. The problem was my mom. She was a super conservative Christian, and even though she was okay with gay people, I knew she'd never let me have a boyfriend while I lived at home. I'd actually had 4 boyfriends she didn't know about, so Mark and I had to keep our relationship a secret. At first, it was fine. We'd go to movies, hang out at his house, and just have fun. But after we hooked up for the first time, he got demanding. He always wanted to see me and would get mad if I couldn't. I tried talking to him about it, and he'd be understanding for about a week. Then he changed. He started ignoring me at school, sending me mean texts, and getting jealous of my friends. By July, after 9 months of dating, I ended it over text while I was in Florida. I was 16, so I did what you do. He went nuts, texting me constantly for a week, then suddenly acting like everything was normal and we were just friends. But when we got back to school, he was a senior and I was a junior, and we had 4 to 7 classes together. At first, he was fine. Then he started staring at me, sending sad texts, begging me to get back together. I told him no and explained why, but he wouldn't stop. By October, he got worse. He texted me at 1 a.m. about taking a whole bottle of melatonin, threatening suicide, and trying to turn my friends against me. I was terrified, but I was too scared to go to authorities because I didn't want my mom to find out. One day, I was working on a float for homecoming and messing around with my 2 guy friends, Zach and Cal Lap. Mark saw us, took off, and later drove himself to the emergency room for a psychiatric evaluation. I was hoping he'd get help, but I had no idea how obsessed he was. One day, I got home from practice and saw Mark's car parked on the street. He was walking out of my house, and my mom was on the porch, waving. She thought we were just friends and really liked him. The next day, he showed up again, sitting on the porch with my mom and my brother. My mom called me over, and it turned out he had told her everything about our relationship, but he twisted it, claiming I was the one who was abusive. My mom yelled at me, but once I explained, she believed me, though I was still grounded. That night, I woke up around 2 a.m. because I was freezing. My window was open, even though I knew I'd locked it, and my bedroom door was cracked open. Then I heard my mom's door close. I ran over and saw her sitting on her bed, calmly holding her 10mm pistol pointed at Mark, who was cowering in the corner with a machete in his hand. My brother was asleep. My mom told Mark to be quiet so he wouldn't wake my brother, then told me to call the cops. The cops came and took him away, but my mom didn't press charges because our family couldn't afford it. The condition was he had to leave Arizona and move in with his dad. After that, I didn't see him much, just got the occasional text from him through friends. I don't know if he was coming for me, my mom, or my brother, but I'm glad my mom had her gun that night. I was 18, living in Egypt for about 2 years. I'm half Egyptian. Since I was new, I wasn't used to dealing with shady people. I lived in a good area and went to a private school, so I rarely got into trouble. My dad was always on business trips, and since I was the oldest, I do all the grocery shopping. One day, a grocery trip turned into an all-nighter. I drove a pretty nice SUV for a teenager in the Middle East. 3 weeks before this happened, I was at the grocery store getting groceries. After I paid, I decided to try a veggie burger I saw on Facebook and grabbed some fries and a soda to go with it. I went to the parking lot and saw a kid, about 15, who looked homeless. I decided to help him out and gave him my fries. I even wanted to talk to him to learn more about his situation. I put my groceries in the back seat, went to shake his hand, and asked him what he was doing there. He told me he was on his way back to his village but had lost all his money. People had warned me about scams like this, but I saw he was really struggling. He said he worked with some guy selling stuff on the street, but had lost his money after a sale. I felt bad and offered to drive him to the bus station and give him some money for a ticket. The bus station was on my way home, so I wasn't worried. When we left the store, the security guard asked me if the kid had been a problem. I told him he was fine, but I was annoyed the guard was so quick to judge. In the car, I shared my burger and soda with him. He gave me directions, and everything was normal until he told me to turn onto a dirt road. I was suspicious. The bus station wasn't out here. I told him I'd check my phone, and he agreed but said it was a shortcut. I started to doubt his story. Then he made a call telling someone, "Hey X, meet me under the bridge. I've got the goods." It spooked me because I hadn't seen him with any goods. When we got closer, I was going to drop him off on the main road, but he called again and said, "I'm on the road in a white SUV." At this point, I was really scared. As we got closer, I saw about 7 guys waiting, clearly for me. Another group was on the opposite side, and one of them had what looked like a stick. They were waving and yelling. The kid said, "You can let me out here." I refused, told him I was only stopping at the police station, which was in the opposite direction. He agreed, but when he opened the door, he tried to hold the handle so it wouldn't close. I immediately shifted gears, swerved hard to his side, which made him let go, and I sped off. I don't know what would have happened if they'd gotten me. Maybe robbery or something with drugs. The whole thing was terrifying. When I was 16, I dated this guy, Tyler, for about 5 months. We broke up when my mom got a new job and my family moved 3 states away. I didn't want a long-distance relationship while I was trying to get used to a new school and a new life. We kept in touch as friends, but then a mutual friend told me Tyler was spreading a bunch of lies, saying he had taken my innocence before I moved. I called him out on it, he admitted it, and I cut him off completely, blocking him on Facebook and my phone. 3 years later, when I was 21, I moved into my first apartment with my long-term boyfriend and two friends. Everything was great. I had a good job, my relationship was solid, and living with my friends was easy. One night, I opened my Yahoo account on my computer for the first time in over a year. I immediately got a message from Tyler. I forgot my automatic login, had him on my Yahoo Messenger. I thought we were both adults, so I chatted with him for a bit. The conversation was light, just small talk. I shared more about my life because it had changed a lot, and he was pretty quiet. We ended the chat because I had to work the next day. But then he started getting weird. I had added him on Facebook, and he messaged me comments on my photos, telling me I had matured and become a woman. At first, I thought it was just an awkward compliment, but he started getting graphic, talking about things he wanted to do to me. I reminded him I had a boyfriend and that his comments were inappropriate. He apologized, but the next day, he started again. I got fed up, threatened to call the police, and blocked him again. I also threatened to send screenshots of his messages to his mom, who was letting him live with her for free. He stopped contacting me after that. A few years later, when I was 25, I was married and had just moved back to the States from Japan for my husband's military career. I was home visiting my family when an old friend, Amber, told me Tyler had been cyber-stalking me for 6 years. Every time I moved to the 2 different states and then to Japan, he would talk about wanting to go to college in the city I lived in. When I was in Japan, he told her he was saving up to travel to the exact region I was in, not big tourist spots like Tokyo. Amber knew he was using fake accounts to follow me on Facebook, but she didn't know the names of them. She was worried because Tyler was known to be a creep and had harassed several women in our old friend group. I was freaked out, but I didn't know what to do without concrete evidence. I eventually forgot about it, until I was working as a hostess at an upscale restaurant. One night, my coworker Gina said, "My friend Tyler had come in looking for me yesterday." I panicked, told her I didn't know anyone named Tyler, and it must have been a mistake. After my shift, I checked my phone and had a message from Amber with a screenshot of a post from Tyler, talking about being in a city close to my work. It turned out he found me because my friends had been tagging me at the restaurant. Terrified, I told my manager what happened. He gave me the next day off and made sure my work didn't involve interacting with customers. My husband picked me up instead of letting me walk home. Since my husband was about to leave for a few months of military training, we decided to move to his hometown across the country. I quit my job earlier than planned and changed my Facebook settings so nobody could tag my location or photos without my permission. Amber told me Tyler had stopped contacting her as much, especially after a mutual friend had filed a restraining order against him. Clearly, I wasn't his only victim. I love true crime, but since this happened, it's not just a fantasy anymore. I'm always looking for red flags. I have no idea why Tyler was so obsessed for so long, and I hope I never find out. I was a sophomore in college, volunteering for an international student program in the Northeast. The program helped students get English certificates for schools or jobs. They came in groups from different countries, and that semester we had a bunch of students from Mexico. They all lived in the on-campus suites. Since I was a volunteer, I felt comfortable befriending them. Some are still my best friends today. I'm pretty introverted and don't drink much or party, so when the Mexican students invited me to a party one weekend, I went. The party was great. It was mostly international students, and I knew most of them. I had a lot to drink, was confidently talking in languages I barely knew, and everything was awesome. Then a few people checked their phones and realized Pamela, a 19-year-old student from Mexico, hadn't come back from downtown. She'd gone to meet her teacher, Charles, for a tutoring session at 5 p.m. It should have ended by 7:30, but it was 11:30 and no one could get a hold of her. Hearing Charles's name made me shiver. Of the 5 teachers in the program, Charles, a creepy Japanese-American guy in his 40s with straight black hair that covered his glasses, was the most suspicious. He acted weird, made comments on girls' blouses, told inappropriate stories in class, and would touch Latina students' shoulders or backs and stare at them. We shared our stories about Charles and got even more freaked out. Pamela's last text was at 5:15, saying her phone was dying but she'd find a way back. It was winter, there was a blizzard warning, and downtown was 3 miles from the suites. Some people figured she was just staying somewhere or got lost in the snow. Nobody had a car, so some of the guys organized a search, walking toward downtown. Luckily, they found Pamela pretty quickly. She was soaking wet and freezing, not dressed for the weather. After she had a hot shower and calmed down, Pamela told us what happened in Spanish. When she got to the diner, Charles wasn't there. She waited 40 minutes, about to walk home because she knew the storm was coming, when Charles showed up, saying he fell asleep in his apartment upstairs. He told her they could have their session there since it was quieter. She agreed, even though she was uncomfortable. He asked her a bunch of personal questions, laughing when she got an answer wrong. After an hour, he cooked dinner for both of them. At 7 p.m., she wanted to leave, but he told her to wait so he could drive her back since it was dark and the storm was bad. When she tried to leave, he stopped her. He led her to his bedroom, where he had a photo studio set up across from his bed. He told her to stand in front of the lights so he could take pictures. Then he showed her photos of other girls, mostly Latina students, in different poses and states of undress. He told her to do similar poses, but she refused. He threw her a set of underwear and a tank top and told her to change into them for a few shots. Terrified, she went into the bathroom and sat there for 10 minutes, almost crying. Finally, he knocked on the door and said he was just kidding and would drive her home. Not trusting him, she grabbed her stuff and left, choosing to walk instead. She was lost for over an hour before they found her. We pushed Pamela to go to the police, but they said there was no explicit crime. She did report him to the program head, who seemed unsurprised, like he already knew about Charles. We later found out a South American student from the year before had dropped out of the program after a few tutoring sessions with Charles and became withdrawn. The program fired Charles immediately after Pamela's complaint. There were rumors he was a wanted sexual predator, using fake names to teach around the country. After that, he vanished. I'm not sure if he was ever caught, but the memory still gives me chills. This happened a few years ago when I was a senior in college. I was working at a coffee shop pretty far from my place, so I took the bus home every night. I remember it was late November and the weather was getting cold. That night, I got off work a little later than usual, around 11 p.m. The downtown area was empty, with only a few cars driving by. I was at my usual bus stop near a big shopping mall, but it was closed and silent. The streetlights were a sickly yellow, casting a long, distorted shadow of me on the wet pavement. I put on my headphones and listened to music to make the loneliness go away, trying to ignore the cold seeping into my bones. Suddenly, I saw a wobbly shadow coming toward me. I didn't pay him much attention, thinking it was just some drunk person heading home. There were always people like that at night in this area. He staggered past me, then suddenly spun around and blocked my way. I knew something was wrong and was about to take off my headphones when he spoke. "Hey, you. Where's your money?" His voice was hoarse and reeked of alcohol. I flinched and quickly took off my headphones. I looked at him. The streetlight hit his face, and I saw his bloodshot eyes and a scraggly beard. He looked like something out of a horror movie. I had never been in a situation like this, and I just froze. "Did you hear me? Where's the money? Give it all to me," he growled, taking another step closer. I instinctively backed away. I don't have any money," I stuttered. The truth was, I only had a few bucks for the bus and some cash from my paycheck, but I had hidden it in my inside jacket pocket. I was terrified, but all I could think about was escaping. "You don't," he sneered, an ugly smile on his face. Then he pulled out a gleaming dagger from his jacket. The blade reflected the streetlight like a cold flash of lightning. "Try saying that again," My whole body went rigid. I never thought I would get robbed, let alone be threatened with a knife in the middle of the city. A crazy idea flashed through my mind. Run. I didn't think, I just acted on instinct, turning to run. But he was faster than I thought. He grabbed my shoulder and yanked me hard. I lost my balance and stumbled. As we struggled, I felt a cold slice on my left shoulder. It wasn't a deep stab, but it was enough to make me feel an immediate, searing pain. Ah! I screamed, dropping the bag I was wearing. The pain made my knees buckle. A rush of warm blood soaked my jacket. I touched my shoulder, feeling the warm, sticky liquid. When I looked down, the sidewalk was stained with a dark red puddle. My blood. It was pooling on the cold concrete. He was surprised by my reaction, too. Maybe he didn't expect me to fight back, but didn't mean to stab me. He flinched, taking a step back. I fell to the ground, holding my shoulder, trying to stop the bleeding. Help! Help me! I screamed, my voice cracking from pain and fear. It wasn't just a shriek. It was a real cry for help, echoing in the quiet street. My scream broke the silence. From a distance, I saw the headlights of a taxi getting closer. Maybe the driver heard me or saw the chaos under the streetlight. He slowed down, then stopped. A couple walking home from a nearby bar also turned around and stared. He saw the lights and the people watching him. Panic flashed across his face. Without a moment's hesitation, he threw the knife on the ground and ran into a dark alley, disappearing into the night. I just sat there, holding my shoulder, shaking. The couple rushed over. The girl pulled out her phone to call 911, and the guy tried to calm me down, using his napkin to put pressure on the wound. The blood kept flowing, one drop after another, soaking the napkin. My head was spinning, and everything went blurry. The ambulance siren in the distance got louder and louder, like a song of salvation. At the hospital, the doctors said I was lucky. The stab wound wasn't too deep, only tearing the muscle, not hitting any bones or major nerves. They gave me 10 stitches. It hurt, but I just felt empty. The police came to take my statement, but I couldn't remember his face, just the bloodshot eyes and the strong smell of alcohol. They said they'd try to find him, but I knew the chances were slim. After that, I missed almost a week of school. The wound healed, but the scar on my left shoulder is still there. A bright red line, a daily reminder of that terrifying night. The scar wasn't just on my skin. It was etched in my mind. Years have passed since that night. The scar on my shoulder has faded a lot, now just a small white line. But the cold feeling of the knife piercing my skin, the coppery smell of blood, and my own screams will never fade. I don't take the bus late at night anymore, and I never wait alone at empty bus stops. I avoid dark streets and quiet corners. The fear of random urban violence still follows me, like a silent shadow, reminding me how fragile life is and that safety is sometimes just an illusion. This happened 3 years ago when I had just turned 21. I was living in Miami, a few months out of college, working for a small company. I had a lot of freedom and loved being out by myself, especially at big shopping malls. That night was a normal Friday. I went to Dadeland Mall to grab some stuff for my new apartment. It was almost 9 p.m. The mall was still busy, but the parking lot was starting to empty out. I parked in a spot a little farther away, near some big trees to avoid the crowd. As I walked to my car with my shopping bags, I was on my phone, checking messages. It was dark, and the overhead lights weren't very bright, casting long shadows. I wasn't paying much attention, just wanted to get home, shower, and go to bed. As soon as I opened my car door and was about to get in, a dark figure flashed past me. Before I could react, the door was slammed shut. A rough hand clamped over my mouth. A sour, musty smell from some kind of cloth hit my nose. My heart hammered in my chest, and my throat tightened. A muffled cry died in my throat. "Stay quiet." A low voice growled in my ear in Spanish. The other hand of the man grabbed my waist, pushing me back. I struggled and kicked, but it was useless. He was too strong. During the struggle, I got a quick glimpse of an old, dirty, silver-gray van parked right next to my car. Its back door was open. A second guy appeared, quick as a flash. He grabbed my arms and yanked them behind my back. A rough rope was wrapped around my wrists, tightening so much I felt my blood vessels might burst. I tried to bite the hand over my mouth, but he reacted fast, clamping down harder. My mouth was filled with the foul smell of the rag. I was shoved into the van. The back of the vehicle was pitch black, stuffy, and smelled awful, like old cigarettes and sweat. I fell onto the cold floor, my hands tied behind my back, my mouth still gagged. Inside, there was a big cardboard box and some dirty old blankets. The two men got into the front seats. I heard the door slam shut, then the engine started. The van began to move, slowly at first, then faster, leaving the parking lot. I lay curled up on the floor, trying to breathe through the small gap in the gag. Tears started streaming down my face, soaking the cloth. I was shaking. Nothing felt real. What the hell was happening? I managed to lift my head a little, peeking through the small gap between the front seats. Outside, streetlights were flashing by, but it wasn't the road home. Where were they going? I could hear them talking in Spanish, mixed with a few English words. Her family is rich. There's definitely money for a ransom. The word ransom sent a chill down my spine. They wanted to hold me for money. The van kept driving through dark streets I'd never seen before. They seemed to be heading deep into some deserted area, far from the city center. I closed my eyes, trying to hold back my sobs. I told myself to stay calm, to think of a way to escape. But my mind was blank, filled only with fear. Suddenly, the van slowed down and stopped. My eyes shot open. They must have arrived. My heart was pounding like it was going to burst out of my chest. One of the men got out. I heard him say something to the other guy. Then his footsteps faded. Only one was left in the van. This was my chance. It was now or never. I lay still listening. The guy in the front was rummaging through something in the glove compartment. He was distracted. I gritted my teeth, putting all my strength into my legs. This was a sliding door van, and I knew there was a simple latch on the inside. I've been in one before. 1, 2, 3. I kicked the side door hard, right at the latch. Missed. One more kick. This time, I put everything I had into it. Bam! The latch broke, and the sliding door creaked open a little. The guy in the front turned around, cursing. He reached back to grab me, but I was faster. I rolled through the small opening and scrambled out, running as fast as I could. It was pitch black, with only a faint moonlight. I had no idea where I was. All I saw were thick trees and old, run-down houses. I just ran like crazy, not daring to look back. I heard the man yell after me, cursing, then his footsteps running behind me. I ran into a small alley, then turned onto another street. My feet stumbled, and I fell hard, but I got back up and kept running. My hands were still tied behind my back, making me lose my balance constantly. Tears, sweat, and fear all mixed together, choking me. Suddenly, I saw a house with a warm yellow light coming from a window. Flash of hope. I didn't think twice, ran straight to it, and pounded on the wooden door. "Help! Please help me!" I screamed, my voice hoarse with fear. The door opened, and an older woman with gray hair stared at me. Her eyes were wide with surprise and fear when she saw me in my pathetic state, my hands tied. I didn't wait for her to say anything, pushed past her, and ran into the house like a cornered animal. Right after, I heard the van's engine rev and speed away. They didn't dare follow me into someone's house. I collapsed on the floor, shaking, tears still streaming. The old woman, though surprised, was kind. She quickly untied me, gave me a glass of water, and called the police. The police arrived fast. They listened to my story through my sobs, took my statement, and tried to calm me down. Because I gave them a description of the van and the two kidnappers, they caught them just a few days later. It turned out they were part of a human trafficking ring that was very active in South Florida. I wasn't their first victim. 3 years have passed, but the cold feeling of my hands being tied, the sound of the van's engine in the dark, and the look in those two men's eyes still haunt my dreams. I don't go shopping alone at night anymore. Parking lots, even during the day, give me a chill. Whenever I see a silver gray van, my heart jumps. I know I was lucky to escape, but the trauma is still there. Maybe scars aren't always a cut on the skin. This happened about 6 years ago, when I was a junior in New York. I was living alone in a small apartment in Kips Bay, Manhattan, going to school and working to afford the crazy cost of living. It was that typical student life, busy all the time, but with some parties and late nights with friends. And that's exactly what that night was. It was a friend's birthday party in a dorm. Music was blaring, lights were flashing, everyone was laughing and having a good time. I had a few cocktails, not enough to be wasted, but enough to feel a little buzzed and floaty. The party went on late, and when I looked at the time, it was almost 2 a.m. I was a little cold, but I didn't want to spend money on a taxi. Plus, I told myself, this is Manhattan, there are always people around, I'll be fine. I decided to walk home about a dozen blocks away. At first, everything was normal. The streets at night are a lot quieter than during the day, but a few taxis still passed by, and there were a couple of other people walking home late like me. I walked and listened to music with my headphones, swaying a little to the beat in my head. But then about 5 or 6 blocks in, a strange feeling hit me. A cold chill down my spine, like someone was staring at me. I took off my headphones and looked back. There was nothing, just a few tall buildings and the yellow streetlights. I shrugged it off, figuring the drinks were making me paranoid. I kept walking, but the feeling didn't go away. It clung to me like a shadow. I started listening for footsteps behind me. At first, I thought it was just the echo of my own steps, but then I realized there was a different rhythm, one that matched my own pace in a terrifying way. I tried to walk a little faster, and the footsteps sped up. I slowed down, and they slowed down too. My heart started pounding in my chest. It wasn't my imagination. He was following me. I started to get really scared. Manhattan no longer felt like the familiar busy city. It turned into a terrifying maze under the sickly yellow lights, where every corner could hide a new danger. I glanced over my shoulder again, and this time I saw him more clearly, a tall hooded figure, about a block behind me, but closing in fast. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm and think of a plan. Up ahead, there was a small, dark alley between 2 old buildings. A reckless idea flashed in my head. I could run in there, maybe lose him, or at least find another way out. I thought it was the fastest way. So I bolted into the alley, running as fast as I could. I had just turned the corner and was about to sigh in relief when another dark figure jumped out from the shadows inside the alley. He blocked me. It was too fast, and I couldn't react. I had walked right into a trap. It was the same guy, or at least someone similar, tall, hooded, his face obscured in the dim light. He had a gleaming knife in his hand, a cold sliver of light reflecting off the blade from the street. "Your wallet." "Give it to me," he rasped, his voice a cold, sharp sound, like a razor scraping the air. I froze, my limbs shaking. Fear was a stone in my chest, making it impossible to breathe. My eyes were glued to the blade. But then some instinct kicked in. That was a month's worth of my part-time work, and I couldn't just lose it. I clutched my bag to my chest. He yanked the bag, and I instinctively pulled back. I screamed, but it was just a strangled cry, a sob caught in my throat. The knife in his hand flashed again. Then a sharp, burning pain shot through my left arm. The knife. He stabbed me. Hot blood started gushing down my arm, staining my jacket red. soaking through the fabric and sticking to my skin. The pain wasn't just the wound, it was the sheer terror that consumed me. This time, I let out a real scream. It tore through the quiet night of the alley, echoing between the cold brick walls. My scream must have been loud enough for people nearby to hear. I saw flashlights turn on at the end of the alley, and I heard someone yell, "Hey, what's going on?" Police. The mugger saw the commotion, cursed, and threw my empty wallet on the ground. He'd managed to grab some cash from the outside pocket. Then he bolted, disappearing into the darkness like a ghost. He was gone in a flash, leaving me alone, shaking and in pain. I collapsed, my arm throbbing, blood still pouring out. A few people ran over, helping me up. One of them quickly used a scarf to wrap the wound and stop the bleeding. I heard police sirens and an ambulance in the distance, getting closer. Everything after that was a blur. I was taken to the hospital. The stab wasn't deep enough to hit my organs, but it was enough for me to be in the hospital for almost 2 weeks for observation and recovery. My arm needed a few big stitches, and it took a few months for the scar to fade and for me to be able to move my arm normally again. Back in 2018, I was a fresh college graduate, full of energy at my first job in Los Angeles. Life in California was a dream. I had a small apartment near Hollywood, work was going well, and every night, no matter how bad the traffic, I felt like life was great. I was 23, young, and had big ambitions. That night was like any other. I had just finished a stressful project at the office and was exhausted. The clock in my car read almost 10 p.m. I was driving home on Interstate 405 near Culver City. It was dark, but the road was busy as usual for LA. I put on some chill music, relaxed, and just wanted to get home for a long sleep. I was in the middle lane, cruising at a steady speed. Everything was normal until, suddenly, in my rearview mirror, I saw bright headlights rushing toward me, but it wasn't a car passing. It was swerving. A large black SUV seemed to have completely lost control, swaying all over the place. I was startled and tried to swerve right to avoid it, but everything happened too fast. In one horrifying moment, the SUV swerved straight into my lane. It didn't brake. It seemed to accelerate. I clearly saw it swaying like a mad animal, its front heading directly for my driver's side. Just before the crash, in the blinding headlights of the SUV, I saw the driver. A blurred face, but I could swear I saw their eyes. Those eyes weren't panicked. They weren't trying to control the car. They were empty, horrifyingly empty, like there was no one there, or if there was, they weren't present in that moment. There was no emotion, just a blank, soulless stare right through me. That moment lasted less than a second, but it's burned into my mind. Then came a terrible crash. Screech. Bang. The sound of metal tearing, a glass shattering like fireworks right in front of me. My car was sent flying, then flipped over. 1 roll, 2 rolls, 3 rolls. Each roll was like an electric shock. I felt my body being thrown around, the seatbelt digging in. The airbags deployed with a violent force, hitting my face. I heard a crack from my nose, and then everything went black for a few seconds. When I came to, I was lying sideways in the wreckage of my car. The air was thick with the smell of gas, smoke, and dust. The windows were gone, the shards glistening like diamonds in the headlights of other cars that were stopping. My head was pounding. One side of my face was hot and wet. It was definitely blood. My right leg was trapped under the completely deformed dashboard, and a sharp, shooting pain went up my spine. I tried to move, but it was no use. The pain was too much. I heard sirens in the distance, people screaming, and footsteps running toward me. My vision was blurry. Everything was spinning. I tried to focus, looking outside. I could still see the remains of the SUV next to my car, its front completely crushed. I tried to find the driver's face again, but I only saw a blurry figure being pulled out by someone. Then came the long days in the hospital. My right leg was shattered and needed surgery with pins and plates. I had a severe concussion and stitches on my forehead and temple. All that time, I felt like a zombie, just lying there staring at the white ceiling. The physical pain could be numbed with painkillers, but the haunting image in my head couldn't be. The police came to take a statement. They confirmed the driver of the SUV, a man in his 50s, had a blood alcohol level 3 times the legal limit. Completely out of control, the officer said. He's been arrested and will face several serious charges. Hearing that just made me angrier at irresponsible people who hurt others. But the image of that driver's empty eyes, not scared or panicked, just a blank stare, it stayed with me. At the time, I thought it was just a concussion, or that a near-death experience made me see things. I tried to convince myself it was just a hallucination from pure terror. Months later, I started the painful rehab process. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the SUV rushing toward me, the driver's blurred face, and those empty eyes. I tried to find information about the accident and the driver in the news, but there was very little. Just a few lines about a drunk driving accident, and the at-fault driver was unnamed for privacy reasons. Physically, I've fully recovered. My leg works fine, though it gets sore when the weather changes. The scar on my forehead is faded. I quit my job in LA and moved back home, opening a small craft shop. The new job gives me a more peaceful life without the stress or crazy traffic of a big city. Back in 2018, I was a software engineer working for a startup in Dallas, Texas. Life was busy but good. My wife, Sarah, and I liked to eat out on weekends, so we didn't have to cook. We'd try new places, from fast food joints to slightly fancier spots. This happened one Sunday night after a long week of work. Sarah wanted to try a new steakhouse that had just opened downtown. It wasn't too fancy, but it looked nice, warm yellow lights, and a good-looking menu. We both ordered the grilled ribeye, medium rare, just how I like it. As I ate, I noticed the meat was a little tougher than usual, and it had a slightly off smell. Not like it was rotten, but something just wasn't right. It was hard to describe. I figured the new chef was still learning, or maybe the cut was just like that. I was hungry, so I didn't think too much of it and finished my plate. Sarah said she wasn't into it and left some of hers. That ended up saving her life. About 2 hours after we got home, my stomach started to cramp up. At first, I thought it was just indigestion and took some Alka-Seltzer. But the pain got worse. It wasn't a normal stomachache. It was a deep, gnawing pain, like something was tearing me up inside. Then the nausea hit. I ran to the bathroom and started throwing up. Everything I had for dinner came out. But even after I emptied my stomach, the horrible feeling wouldn't go away. My stomach was still cramping, and I started dry heaving with uncontrollable spasms. At the same time, a fever came on. My body was burning up, I was drenched in sweat, but I was shaking uncontrollably from the cold. Sarah got worried when I was in the bathroom for so long. She knocked, then opened the door. When she saw me sitting on the floor, pale and shaking, dry heaving, she freaked out. I was too weak to speak, only managing a few broken words. Pain hot, not good. Sarah tried to give me water, but as soon as I swallowed, I threw it right back up. The fever was getting higher, and my head was spinning. Everything started to blur, and my ears were ringing. The last thing I remember was Sarah on the phone, her voice shaking. I collapsed onto the bathroom floor, my head hitting the cold toilet, and everything went dark. When I woke up, I was on a stretcher with ambulance lights flashing on the ceiling. Sarah was holding my hand, her eyes red from crying. I was so weak I couldn't even lift my head. The paramedics were working on me, and the ambulance siren was wailing, tearing through the night. At the hospital, things happened fast. I got in 4 and a blood test. The doctor said I had a severe case of salmonella poisoning. My kidneys were close to shutting down from extreme dehydration and infection. If your wife had been a few minutes later, things could have been very different, the doctor told me, looking at me with a serious expression. You were very lucky. I was in the hospital for almost a week. It was a horrible week. My body ached, my stomach was still sore, and the fear just wouldn't go away. While I was recovering, Sarah told me what happened. The police had opened an investigation into the restaurant. It turned out the head chef had been fired the week before, but he still had a key and snuck back into the kitchen. He had deliberately left the fresh beef out at room temperature for hours to spoil before putting it back in the fridge. His goal was to get revenge on the owner, making customers sick and hurting the restaurant's reputation. I was one of the worst affected victims. The restaurant was shut down immediately, and the chef was arrested. He said he just wanted to cause trouble and didn't expect anyone to almost die because of it. But to me, that didn't mean a thing. This happened about 4 years ago, when I had just moved to the US for college. I was new to everything. I live in a small apartment near campus, and to save money, I walk home every night after my late classes or when the library closed. The streets around my school were old but had a lot of police patrols, so I wasn't too worried. That month, it started getting cold, and the streets were emptier. Usually, I'd listen to music on my way home, but my phone was dead that night. So I walked in silence, just the rustle of dry leaves under my feet and the hum of the streetlights. My neighborhood had a bunch of small alleys between the buildings, and I never paid them any mind. That night, as I was walking through an old block, my eyes happened to glance into a pitch-black alley. It was usually just a dark space, but this time I saw a person hiding inside, right against the brick wall. It looked like a tall man standing there. I figured it was just someone smoking or taking a shortcut, so I didn't think much of it. But then I took a few more steps, and when I glanced back, the figure had moved from its original spot and was now closer to the alley's intersection. It wasn't walking. It wasn't running. It was gliding. It was unnaturally fast, and it was completely silent. No footsteps, no rustling clothes. I got a chill down my spine. I sped up my pace. My heart started pounding. I told myself I was overreacting, that it was just the dark, and I was tired. But every time I looked to my right, the figure was still there, gliding along with me, keeping a constant, silent distance. It felt like someone was rollerblading incredibly fast without making a sound. At that point, I was genuinely terrified. I started to run. I ran as fast as I could, trying to look back. He was still there, a tall, blurry figure, but definitely getting closer. I could see the shape of him stretching out, like he didn't need to lift his feet to move so fast. It didn't look like a normal person. The way he moved defied all logic. I ran for my life, gasping for breath. The alley just kept going next to me. I didn't even dare to look over anymore, just ran for the lights of my apartment complex. When I got close to the final turn, where the alley met another one, I heard a faint whoosh sound, like a gust of wind right by my ear. I jumped and looked back. He was gone. There were no footsteps fading away. No figure hiding in a corner. The alley was empty. He had just vanished, as if he had never been there at all. I didn't stop running until I got inside my apartment, locked the door, and leaned against it, gasping for air. I was shaking, covered in a cold sweat. I turned on all the lights, checked that the windows were locked, and just sank to the floor. I tried to find an explanation. Maybe a drug addict? A mentally ill, homeless person? But the way he glided in silence, the way he vanished without a trace, it wasn't human. Since that night, I've never walked home alone in the dark. If I have to, I call a taxi or ask a friend to walk with me. It's been almost 4 years, but every time I pass a dark alley or hear a faint step behind me on an empty street, my heart pounds. I don't know who or what that was. Maybe it was just some weird guy, but the way he moved as fast as the wind with no sound still makes me wonder. It just lingers in my mind, like something I saw that I wasn't supposed to see.